Technology continues to play a vital role in the COVID-19 pandemic as it helps us stay connected while keeping us apart. But as we prepare for the new normal, what is next for the digital world? Let's hear now the views of Michael Bociurkiw, Global Affairs Analyst and author of the book Digital Pandemic. He joins us from Los Angeles. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael. In your book, you say that technology has gone from bad to good. Why so? When, big tech is being criticized for stealing and selling data, getting people addicted to apps and social media, and they also pay little taxes. Mike?
Right. Well, first of all, I should... Sorry about that. Yeah, first of all, I should say to you, Rico, magandang gabi sa'yo, Rico, at sa lahat ng nanonood ng the final word.
Mabuhay to you too, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, well, during the pandemic, if there's one thing we found is that tech actually did go from bad to good, especially, Rico, in the way it connected people, connected us to loved ones. It allowed the economy during the strictest lockdowns, whether it was in Singapore and in Kiev, people were still able to order things online. Students were able to access distance learning. I have to tell you, Rico, the numbers are quite amazing. But in the last year alone, during the pandemic, 40 million people in Southeast Asia clicked onto the internet for the first time, enabling them to take advantage of all of these things. Now, of course, in your intro, you mentioned there are bad things about tech. Now, they steal our data and track us and get us addicted to those apps. But I think as time goes on, we're seeing regulation is taking more and more care of that and putting the big tech companies more on their guard.
So Mike, are you telling us then that the good in technology is here to stay?
I think so. It will evolve, but it's going to take pressure from consumers and governments. And what I mean from pressure from consumers is that we provide for free a lot of data 24/7 to those big companies, big tech companies, which they resell. And as I pointed out in the book, it's time for those companies to pay us for that data. And that is happening in certain parts of the world. But the other thing is, I think personally, we have to take our own responsibility. Just quickly, Rico, a lot of people, and I know people in the Philippines love social media in their phones.
Yes.
They wake up and the first thing in the morning they do is check their phone, and it's the last thing they do before they go to bed. So I think more calibration, more responsibility in how we consume tech would be a good thing overall.
And speaking of social media, Mike, you wrote an entire chapter about this, and this COVID pandemic has seen the rise and the strength of social media influencers over the past year.
Yeah, there were a couple of interesting things we found in the book. One was the rise of what's called social audio, things like Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces, where people don't have to go on the screen anymore to, connect with people worldwide. They just use audio via these two platforms. That allows you to drive or to cook or do whatever while you're connecting with people around the world and also learning new things, connecting with experts. So that's very important. But in terms of the influencers, it's very important what happened. In the pre-COVID days, a lot of influencers were living the high life, traveling in first class, staying at great resorts and putting it out on their social media feeds. But a lot of companies now are demanding more return on investment from these so-called influencers. And the whole calibration is changing. And just quickly recall an interesting figure. Last year alone, we collectively uploaded 1.4 trillion photos to social media, Instagram, for example. That's up from 380 million in 2012. So it goes to show you how much we're kind of addicted and dependent on social media.
Well, this pandemic has really made the internet and social media a behemoth. And a lot of people are now really addicted to the internet and social media. Let me ask you, Mike, you know so much about the Philippines, having been South China Morning Post country correspondent for a couple of years during the 1990s. You've seen and read what's happening in the Philippines. The elections are taking place in about 11 months. And key here are some of the issues like the West Philippine Sea, you have the COVID-19 response, and the faltering economy. How important is the 2022 elections for Filipinos going forward?
Well, hugely important. And I greet all of my friends in the Philippines. It's a country I really fell in love with when I was working there. But I have to say, under President Duterte, things have changed a lot and often not for the better. If I can be blunt with you, Rico, as we usually are, I think he's basically sold out the country to China, going there, early in his term and, basically prostrating himself in front of the Chinese and saying, yes, we will take your money, and yes, we will stay quiet on what's happening in the South China Sea. Secondly, in terms of the pandemic response, I was shocked to see the slow rate of vaccination. Now, I do appreciate that there have been problems, I believe, with the dengue vaccination in the past. A lot of people are suspicious of it, but the Philippines, I ran some numbers now, is very low. It's behind Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, and Botswana. Only 2.8% of the population has been vaccinated. And at this rate, Mike, it would take 6 years to vaccinate, 4 years to vaccinate everyone.
Mike, we have about 30 seconds before the end of this interview. There's a lot of talk right now in the Philippines that we may see a Sara Duterte, Rodrigo Duterte tandem for president and vice president in 2022. How do you think will the Western allies, the Americans and the British, view this? Will they look at this as a good thing?
Well, whoever gets elected, and if it's a duo, I think it's really important for the Philippines to revoice its connection, its dependence, not dependence, but its connection with the United States militarily, economically. China is acting very, very aggressively right now. It needs a strong Western partner, such as the United States, to push back against China. The influence, the aggressiveness of China is unbelievable at the moment. It's something that all Filipinos, I think, should take an interest in for their long-term economic well-being.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Final Word. Michael Bociurkiw, author of Digital Pandemic, joining us from Los Angeles.